Um, there we go. So please do put questions that you have in the chat, or we're a small group, so I think we could go with people asking questions if you need to. But also, there might be questions that we hold as follow-up questions for another session at another date. But now that we have a roof over our heads, we might be ready in our church to rent out our space to members in the community. So we have a question about that. When renting church space, how do our third-party tenants get insurance? And how should we determine the rental rates for these tenants? So when we're renting out our church space, how do our tenants get insurance? And how do we determine the rental rates? And Mark, I'm going to let you keep going with answering.
Yeah, unfortunately for everyone, you're going to get to hear a lot from me this evening, it seems like. So this one again is depends for how to get third-party insurance or the rate for tenants. Depending on what your own insurance provider is, it can be possible to get insurance certificates for third parties renting your space through your own insurance. You would need to contact your own insurance to ask about this as an option, which may be an option that you have to pay for. But if you do, then that can then factor into the cost of renting, as you would just include that as the piece as something they wouldn't have to get on top of renting anyway. If there is something, an organization renting your space that is more robust, like a sports league, for instance, using your gym, they do require their own insurance. They can't get a rider on your own. As for the different rates for people getting renting, it really also does depend on where you're located and what the goal of your church is. If you're trying to be a community space, or are you trying to use your rentals as an income stream? I've served at a church where they rented their space as a pay what you can. And so they had a suggested rate for their small town, but it really was just a pay what you're able. And we want you to be here in this space. And if you can give us some money to help with the lights and gas while you're here, that's great. But it wasn't a big factor. I know other churches that use their building as rental income to help support their ministries. So from those standpoints, it really depends what your church is looking to do. It also depends on where you're located, right? A church in Mississauga is going to be charging a different rate for their space than a church that's in Clinton. It's just the way that it's going to be. What I would suggest is, if you're not sure of how much you should be charging for your space, perhaps check with your local community centers, other churches, maybe the Lions Club or the Legion, if they have space that they rent out to groups, to see what other people are charging, to make sure that you're in line, that you're not charging too much, but also that, if there's the possibility to get a little bit more, then maybe you want to do that as well. There is a helpful document that is entitled Leases and Rentals of Congregational Property Policy, and that is found in all three websites under the Toolkits tab. Then once you go under Toolkits, you go into Property, and there's a document on leases and rentals. It doesn't give any ideas on price, but it does give a great list of things that you can be considering when renting to outside organizations, which then might help you in that decision making of how much you want to charge. If you are with, for insurance for third parties, if you are with UCC Protect, the United Church insurance provider, or with Hub, you can get proof of insurance certificates. And it is my understanding that there's no extra charge for those if you are using them for insurance.
Thank you. I guess if we're going to rent the building out, we probably want it to look presentable. We might need the lawn cut, but luckily we've got a volunteer or someone in the church who is wondering if they can donate money just to the church to get the lawn cut. So this is about donating for specific purposes. Can I donate money to my church just for the lawn mowing? Mark, how do we handle this kind of donation?
So the short answer to this one is yes, you can, but it becomes complicated. So I'll give you the complicated answer. But yes, members or churches can set up any kind of fund that they want. If the church is setting up the fund itself, it is then called an internally restricted fund. If you're bequested money from somebody for a specific purpose, that becomes an externally restricted fund, which makes it harder to change. So these are all of those though are considered designated funds. So these funds must be used for the intended purpose that they were donated for. So in this case, someone saying, I'm giving this church money and I'm saying I want it to be used for lawn cutting. The church has to use it for lawn cutting. However, if someone wants to donate money for a purpose that the congregation does not want or need, the congregation can refuse that donation. The congregation cannot take the $2,000 for the summer of lawn cutting and use it on their roof. But they can say, no, we don't need that money for lawn cutting because we don't have a lawn. Um, so either donate it to us without the restrictions, or you are welcome to keep it yourself. You have to refuse it. You have to use it for what it's come from. So,
Excuse me, Michelle. I think Rick had a question from the previous question.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm on an iPad, so I can't see a ton of things.
Sorry to interrupt there, Mark.
No, that's great. Rick, what was your question?
It was more of a follow-up to what we're talking about insurance, and I believe I was one of the originators of the question. And it's good information to have that one of the reasons why we charge what we charge for halls is directly relatable to what we have to pay for insurance. So we can give the hall away, but if the insurance is $8 million, you're never going to rent the hall. And that was our struggle at our church. So we come across a funeral a few weeks back, and like all funerals, they're not planned. So, and it was a large funeral, and member of the church and stuff, and it ended up costing them $105 for a 4-hour funeral, and I had been saying long before that that seems like it's a huge number, and so I reached out to ask an expert, and actually I'll be honest with you guys, I got an answer back pretty quickly, which I was kind of not disappointed. I mean, I wasn't like thinking it would take forever, but it came back quickly, and I think that was critical. And that was the link I put in the chat. That chat that I put in was a link to the Hub Insurance. That same insurance, same configuration, same event, same day, same number of people, everything exactly the same, was half the price. Okay, that's significant because when I compared that half a price against my calls out to the local halls, towns, and other similar facilities, it was in line. So what I'm saying is our church was not renting things because they felt the insurance was too high, but we hadn't done our due diligence and really kind of reached out to this group in particular to get that answer, and that is a big difference. We were going online to a company called PAL, it was good and everything. But the beauty of the online Church Hub one was it's instant. You get it back right away. So it was really nice. So that's what I want to add to that conversation.
Perfect. Thank you.
No, that's very good information. And I would add to that too, that depending on what the church is doing, the church, your own insurance provider might consider funerals or things like that as a normal working of the congregation, even if and that they might not need extra insurance because that might just be covered normally. But that'll depend on who your insurance provider is for that as well.
I asked our trustees that directly, and they seemed to think that it wasn't included. I didn't feel comfortable with the answer, so we ended up having to get third-party insurance. Obviously, like
Yeah.
you said, Mark, scouts, guides all carry their insurance anyway, so it's pretty easy. It's the funerals, the weddings, baby showers, bridal showers, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
That's helpful.
it really heartened to hear that asking an expert was useful even before we got to the workshop tonight.
Yeah, no, it was good. I'm serious. Like, I love that when, I expected a week or something. I understand that we're all busy people. So they came back within, I think, that same day. It was like really fast. I forget
Yeah.
who was it that answered it, but I think I recognize the name. I don't at this moment, but I do know it was really quick, and I want to thank that person.
Great.
Excellent.
Thank
I
you.
did actually. So
Yeah. So are you good for me to finish up on this one then, Michele? I got a little bit more.
Thanks so much, Rick. I think we're done, Michele Owens, with can I donate money to my church just for lawn mowing?
I have a little bit more on that one,
Okay.
on the lawn mowing one. So as I said, designated funds, they have to be used for what it is. One thing to note is you cannot, as a church, you cannot have designated funds for a specific individual who, like, for example, has had a house fire. You're not allowed to accept donations specifically for that. Another thing is, if a tax receipt is given to the donor for a designated fund, then you have to have accepted that fund. That fund cannot be returned to the donor. The church can change a designated fund if that fund no longer serves a purpose, i.e., mowing a lawn, but they no longer have a lawn. But that designated fund then needs to be changed at a congregational meeting, and every reasonable effort needs to be made to let those who donate to that fund and the money that is still there know of the change and give them the opportunity to direct their donation to another fund within the church. But again, the money cannot be given back. If they say, no, we want it to be in the lawn mowing fund, even though there isn't a lawn, then their money that they donated has to stay there, but you could invest it, and that investment income could be used for whatever you want. Unused designated funds could also be donated to another church with input from the donor as well. So that's where it is complicated, that you can create designated funds, but if you create them, it then becomes complicated getting out of them.
So I appreciate the depth and breadth of the answer you gave us. If we forget this in 6 months when somebody comes up to us with questions of designated funds, I just want to highlight you are the expert that we contact about that, right? Yeah. Fabulous. So,
Sorry to interrupt. We have a question from Rick.
just a point of clarification, Mark. When you say you cannot donate to a person, so just let me clarify, because we've done this in the past. Mary's house burns down and we want to create a fund for Mary and we donate money to Mary. So you're saying we can't do it in that traditional sense? Is that what I'm hearing?
You cannot issue tax receipts for that.
But we can collect money from the congregation for that and give those monies to Mary.
You can collect money from the congregation to give monies to Mary, but you cannot give out tax receipts for that.
Okay, so it's a tax receipt hang up. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the CRA doesn't like you doing that.
Yeah.
So what? Yeah, I understand that. That makes sense. I could see how you could easily filter a lot of money through other people. Yeah.
Yes.
I could see the gray side of that for sure. Yeah.
Well, and now you have things also like GoFundMe that
Yep.
can become an avenue. If the church really wants to step aside, you can do something like a GoFundMe to allow people to donate through that way, and the money goes. But yeah, yes, it's the tax receipt piece is the hang up. There is nothing stopping a group of 20 people in a congregation from trying to help someone in the community. The church just can't give them tax receipts for it in that way. The workaround is your church creates a designated fund that is an emergency fund
Yes, we do have that as well. Yeah.
right? And the emergency fund is for any
Wide
kind
open.
of emergency in the
Yep.
community.
Yep.
People can donate to the emergency fund, and then you could use that for Mary's house.
Yeah. Yes. And Brenna's reminding us that sometimes that's called a benevolent fund
Yeah.
Yes.
in churches that is given to folks. So thank you. So we're talking about donating our money and giving our tax receipts and tracking our donations. So our next question is, are there software recommendations for donations? Brenna, are there software recommendations?
The short answer is no, but the longer answer is kind of. My dad has this saying, ask somebody the time and they'll tell you how to build a clock. That's what I'm about to do. I'm about to tell you how to build a clock. So if I'm going to share because I made some slides here. Let's see.
Now you're showing me up. I didn't make my own slide
Oh no,
presentation.
you had too many questions. I just have one question. So, okay. So, what to think about? So, what I want to say is the software that you choose is really dependent on your context and what you want to use it for. A church maybe that has 40 members and a pretty straightforward revenue stream might use one thing. A church with hundreds of members and like lots of renters, lots of donors who aren't members, like more complex things would use a different kind of software. So I'm going to talk you through some of the things that you would want to think about, your team, your leadership team, whoever's kind of working on transitioning from one software to another. So the first thing is to think about, why are you looking for new software? So what features do you need that you don't currently have? I often hear from churches who want to, in my role as stewardship support staff, they're like, we need better software, but it's like, what are you actually looking for? So sometimes people want better reporting. They want to be able to create graphs and things that are easy to understand. Sometimes you need more categories, more way of, like, speaking of designated funds, you need to be able to break donations into that. And some churches are looking for membership management. So some of the software can also create like a directory. Do you need that? Is that what you're looking for? You can break people up into categories with tags, so-and-so on the worship team, so-and-so on property, whatever. So to think about really what you're looking for, and then that helps to narrow down the choices. We also recommend that you consider your budget. So more and more software is moving to a subscription type model where you're paying either annually or monthly, whereas in the past, like lots of us can remember just buying something one time and that was kind of it. Those types of software are still out there, but you just want to think about, like, what is our budget for this, and are we comfortable paying on a monthly or annual basis, and how much are we willing to spend on this? You want to talk to the staff or the volunteers who will be using the software, and ask them, are you willing to learn new technology? Sometimes people aren't for many reasons. And so then the question is, do we stay with the volunteer who's committed to this? Do we need to ask if somebody else would be willing to work with the new technology? That's just a big piece that we kind of come across for anything, right? In the church, if you're looking at hybrid worship or any kind of tech thing, who's going to do it? Are they willing to take the time to sit and learn it? Make sure you have those conversations really with a lot of generosity and grace, to make sure you know what your options are. And then a really big one is who needs to access the information and how. So a lot more software now is moving to a cloud system where, let's say Mark and I are the kind of co-bookkeeper treasurers of a community of faith. We could each log in from home and see everything, and we don't have to be at the church to do it. There are still some software that is, would be on the computer of the office administrator, like one computer, one person kind of thing. So think through what works best, and just know how that's going to work, I guess, ahead of time. Here's a million other things to think about. Data security. So there are more and more programs coming out of the US, things like Breeze you might have heard about. They will be trying to get into your email, the church's email, and, give you shiny ads and things like that. They're great. Like, I'm nothing against them, but the ones that are US will store your data in the US, on their servers. There have been lots of leaks and data breaches and things across the year. So just know, like, think about if that's important to you. And then also those are often based on a US pricing system. So it might be a little bit pricier, but just again, something to think about. Customer service as well is something that a lot of churches want to know about. You want to know if there's an emergency, like, can we get a real human being on the phone quite quickly? And how does that work? So you might want to read reviews about that. The one thing I think we don't do enough is talk to your neighbors. Call the church down the street. If it's United or not, call the mosque, the temple, see what software they're using, see what they like about it, see if their treasurer, bookkeeper, office admin will maybe let you look over their shoulder at kind of non-sensitive information, just to kind of see what the layout is, because for me, that's like really important. How will it look and how do they use it? Just talk to other people and see what they're using. And then my colleague Vicky likes to say, expect and plan for 6 months of chaos. There will be 6 months of a learning curve where people are learning how to use this. Maybe you're showing your congregation something about it, like they have to understand how it works, because maybe now there's like a mobile feature where they can do something on their phone they couldn't do before, whatever it is. And we say that because, like November might not be a great time to switch software, because you'll be having all the donations from Christmas, like the one time, and it might be chaotic. So just to think about that when you're actually transitioning. So now to actually answer the question. Yeah.
Just before you get started, I did see in the chat someone saying, but wait, aren't all United churches required to use Power Church?
No, not at all.
Okay.
There's no requirement. And I don't even know that one very well. I've heard it mentioned, but it's not one of the 4 that I know as well. So no, there's no hard and fast, like, you have to use this. We still know of churches that are doing it pen and paper, like keeping a ledger book. So not recommended, but it is an option. So
pen and paper is not one of your recommendations, but you're going to tell us about some that are that you see used in a lot of churches.
Yes. So these are 4 that we know are used very frequently in United churches. I believe they're all Canadian based. The first one is Donarius, and it's the most budget friendly. I believe it has a one-time fee, and then you might have fees if you want to upgrade, but you don't have to necessarily. This is a good option if you're doing like a one computer model just in the church office. But it does have limited capability, so you're not going to get all the flashy features, but it will get the job done. ChurchWatch is one of the most popular ones that I know. And then this is a better option if you want to do a lot of customizing for various revenue streams. So if you want to keep track of the donations that came from Vacation Bible School and the donations that came at Christmas, and if you have a lot of customizing that you want to look at, ChurchWatch is better for that. Software for nonprofits. is the one that Eric Matheson, the former CFO of the United Church, that's the one that he recommended quite highly. It's really known for good customer service. Like, you will get somebody on the phone that day. However, I would say a downside is it is a little bit more streamlined, less based on membership organization. So if that's important to you, like, it won't make a directory, for instance, whereas some of these other ones can actually create a directory, something that people could log into and see. You could organize your membership, that sort of thing. Last, a newer option is through Canada Helps. So many of us know Canada Helps because that's our online giving option, but they also actually have a donor management system that's pretty new. But even though it's Canada Helps, you can integrate all of your other, like your envelopes and your PAR and stuff like that can be uploaded into that. It's a cloud thing. So again, that instance of like Mark and I, if we're working on this together, can both have access to it wherever we are. There's a monthly fee for that one. So maybe a pro, maybe not. And Canada Helps, just to say, is also a nonprofit. So when you support them, you're supporting a nonprofit that does amazing work, I think, across Canada. So this one is a new one that you could check out. The last thing I'll say for more support, this has been a bit of a side project for me, creating a church tech best practices network where we're going to talk about all this kind of thing. So if you're interested, you can sign up on Church X, and there's a discussion forum there. You could start a discussion that just says, hey, what donation software are you using? And see what other people are saying. And we have a best practices document there that would help you work through some of these questions, right? Like what to consider when you're thinking about things. And I would just say too, I today in preparation for this one on YouTube, and there's all of these things have videos where you can kind of get a sense of what it looks like and how it works. Quick overviews that are 2 minutes long all the way to an hour of, learning. So yeah. Okay, I'm just looking and catching up on that. Yes, all of these can issue tax receipts. I'm just seeing if there's, okay, mostly it's just links, but, Kent, you guys use Denarius? Yeah.
Yeah, it works absolutely fine. It's kind of old. It doesn't have a great user interface, but because we focus just on tax receipts for Denarius, that's good enough. And it is incredibly cheap. One-time fee of about $60 or $70, and you can use it forever.
Yeah. Great. That's good to know.
And I think it was Susan maybe who mentioned Power Church, and I would just say that's what my church uses.
Yeah.
And but talk to me in February, because we are going to be transitioning from the one computer old software that we have that is on the administrator's computer, upgrading to the cloud program. So we'll let you know. You asked me in February, we can tell you how that went, because we really rely on it for membership management, as well as tax receipts and donors.
Brenna,
that's good to know.
It looks like a question for you from Rick.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I always have questions. I live in the tech world. It's what I do for a living. So just to kind of augment your 4 suggestions, and they're all great suggestions, I just want the group to understand and pass along that picking the right program is obviously important, but data security and backup is important. And one of the real advantages to cloud-based is the data is backed up. So if you fall off the planet, the data is still there. Data security, and I live in this world where we've literally had rogue employees take control of that data and destroy it or make it inaccessible. So that will go back more to your church tech stuff, best practices. I'd love to be part of that. But I just want to make sure we all understand that data is very sensitive. Okay. So whenever that data is stored in the U.S. on any server in the U.S., it is scrutiny to the Homeland Security. So they can do what they want to do with that data, look at it, whatever. If obviously it's needs to be legally requested, but they can't just snoop for the sake of snooping. So just be concerned about that. Some people are sensitive about that.
Yeah, that's really great, Rick. And it makes me think something else I would mention is just our stewardship team really recommends that it not be that multiple people have access to. It can be
1000%.
2 or 3, but it doesn't, not that everybody needs the password, but we have run into definitely situations where the finances are not, most of the time it's completely innocent and
Always.
just a
Yep.
mistake. But if you have 2 or 3 people looking at things, it protects everyone and just ensures that there's more kind of transparency and prevents I guess mistakes from happening. So yeah.
Things happen. Yeah, I have it on my computer at home. Once my computer crashes, data's gone.
Yeah,
Who did that?
exactly.
Who did the backup? We so nobody does backups, but I guarantee that.
Brenna, there's a question for you. Thank you, Rick. There's a question for you in the chat from a call. Brenna, are any of these available through Buying United and TechSoup?
Oh yeah. Can I look into it? I know I want to say no.
No.
But is there going to be follow-up to this? I can look into it and
Yes.
Okay.
I
That's a
delve
good
in
question.
TechSoup a lot, and there is not any of those on TechSoup. That's been a couple months since I delved in, but I'm in TechSoup a lot.
I'll see if there's anything on either of those, but yeah, the best that there would be is like Microsoft, the suite of things is available on TechSoup, so you'd have like Excel in that, which is an option also, but yeah, I'll look into it.
Thank you, Brenna. Okay, Michele.
Well, we've trying to figure out tracking our donations with our software and keeping our finances in good order. One of the things that includes is doing an annual financial review. Where can we find someone to do our church's financial review, Mark?
Sorry, I knew myself. The first thing to think of is when you're looking at this for your church is to note that there is a difference between if you were looking at a financial review or a financial audit. So you want to make sure you know what it is your church is looking for, because they will have different people able to do those things and different costs associated to them. So there are 2 resources that you can have a look at for the not-for-profit financial review, so that you know what should be involved in that. CPA Canada and the National Council of Nonprofits both have resources there to give you ideas of what sorts of things you should be looking for when you do a review. After that, depending again what it is, if it is a financial review, it is possible to get someone from your congregation, get someone locally, and have them do it. If it's an audit, then you need to have a firm that will do audits. One place that you can look if you're looking to hire someone is on Charity Village. You can look there to hire someone and post it, or also look at other similar job types that people have on there. For this sort of thing, if it's a review or an audit, it is also possible. You can always look on do a job posting through Facebook or Kijiji. With those, I would just warn that you really have a look at people's credentials before you're turning over financial information to them. It can be possible to do that in a small town, but please be careful anytime that you are doing that. But another option that could work is if you have a college or university nearby and students seeking jobs that are enrolled in accounting programs might be willing to have a look for you. Again, through looking at the information, that is there in CPA Canada and the National Council of Nonprofits. If you are hiring someone that is not attached to an accounting firm, you're going to want to make sure that you have a good system set up for accountability and for checks on making sure that as we talked before, it is all sensitive information. You do want to be careful who you're handing that over to. Not saying that everyone you meet is going to be bad, but it is something you just do need to have due diligence with. So yeah, that's kind of, there is no one go-to place because again, depending where you are, you're going to have different options available to you.
And Mark, I just want to check. I heard you say someone from the congregation could do the financial review. Can you say a bit about who could do that and who should not do it?
Sure. So ideally, anyone you're getting to do the financial review, you would like to have some form of financial background to start with. Again, this is a review, not an audit, right? They are two different things. You should not have someone who is related to the treasurer do the financial review. You should not have someone who's related to the minister do the financial review. You want someone, obviously they can be a member of the church so people know them, but you want them to not have, right? It's the whole conflict of interest of not have a personal vested interest. Other than that, a church can ask anyone to do a financial review because really all it is it's a review is looking over the books to double check numbers to see that everything looks right. So you don't need to have a master's in accounting or to be able to do that. But in the church, you do need to make sure you're avoiding conflicts of interest.
Fabulous. So speaking of people who are looking after our finances and looking at our finances, if someone is volunteering as one of the people counting the Sunday givings, do they need to get a police check? Oh, wait, I'm answering this one. Answering this one. And my answer is that that police records checks are one of the tools we can use to keep our communities and our congregations safe. So, we could ask our counters to have a police records check. It's important when we're asking for criminal records checks to be clear about what it is that we're looking for. So if I'm asking for a criminal records check from my Sunday school volunteers, I'm actually looking for a different kind of conviction than I am if I'm asking for a criminal records check for someone who is counting the Sunday offering. So we want to be clear about what we might be looking for to come back as a record, who is going to actually look at the criminal records check in order to see what's on it. That needs to be somebody that we can really trust with confidential information. And what are we going to do if one of those criminal records checks actually comes back with records on it? Because I know I've looked at a ton of them and you just kind of get used to going, oh yeah, there it is, there it is, there it is. There's the criminal records checks. Every once in a while, one of them comes in with a conviction. So what are we going to do if it comes in with a conviction? So those are important things to keep in mind what we're looking for, but also to be clear that they are just one tool. We might ask for a vulnerable sector check if we're doing if we're asking for criminal records checks from our pastoral visitation team or our Sunday school teachers. But it's also important to look at the whole picture of where we are vulnerable and what our best procedures need to be and our best practices. So are we leaving a Sunday school teacher alone in a room with just one or two kids? Are we sending out pastoral visitation volunteers by themselves when nobody knows where they are or who they're visiting? Are we making sure that we have two people counting? Are we making sure that nobody wanders around or takes uncounted money somewhere? And as a congregation who is going to be worshiping in a temporary space, figuring out how we were going to be adapting all of our usual counting practices in a temporary rental space on Sunday mornings meant that we had to really look at how are we going to keep all of these best practices in place so that the money gets counted and recorded, and we're not putting someone in the position of taking the offering somewhere else. So I think that it really depends on our own context and community, which places we might ask for police records checks. But the really important thing is to remember they're only one piece of keeping everything safe. So I'm giving this answer on behalf of Kathy Douglas, who is regional staff who was not able to be with us today. Did I see a question or a comment from Jane pop up, or where are we at with questions?
There's a question from Jane. I can't reach the chat. Lorianne, could you read it out?
Yeah, sure. Should church offering be taken to someone's home after church to be counted, or should it be counted at the church and deposited in the bank after it's been counted? So can you take it home, or should you deposit it right after you count it at the church?
Well, I would defer to an actual authority on this, but I'd be real worried if someone was taking uncounted money home with them. I don't think that's a good idea, and is exactly what we're working hard at White Oaks to make sure that nobody is doing.
Jane, do you have a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
She's typing.
Okay.
Just one sec, Rick.
Yep.
Michele, we want to talk about photos and social media too after this.
Oh, okay. Yep. Oh, yes. I missed that part of the question. I could read the whole actual question out. Sorry. So that, and does every volunteer paid accountable person offering leadership require a police records check or a vulnerable sector check? So we've talked about that. Like, not everyone is required to, and I think we really need to think about what are we expecting the criminal records check to do, and where are the places that it is really crucially important that they're done, if anywhere. And then the next part of that question is, do we need written or signed consent to post pictures of people on social media and church platforms?
Okay.
Has Jane's comment come up?
Yes, I have the second part of Jane's question, which is, should a husband and wife be the only counters on Sunday, and this couple takes the money home to count it?
I can only answer as to say that would worry me if that was happening in my church. But I don't know if someone else wants to give a different answer to that. But it would worry me because it puts the congregation members at risk. If nothing else, it puts them at risk of being accused of taking money. Even if we trust them to the nth degree. I think Rick wants to agree.
The optics are bad. The optics are bad. I mean, you could have them again. Most things are not nefarious, but it's just it looks bad. And as if I was the husband or the one going home with it, I wouldn't want to do it because of that. Mm-hmm. You're setting yourself up for, and all somebody has to do is scratch their head once, and suddenly it's unfortunate, but you get a bad name pretty quick. I think that's not a good practice at all. It shouldn't be the same. Shouldn't be somebody in the same family counting. Husband and wife. It should be husband and somebody else. It doesn't matter who. So
yeah.
But my question. I'm sorry if we're not done. I've got a question after that. So if we want to finish this one out, that's fine. So
no, I think we're good. Go ahead, Rick.
Sorry, Rick. I'm going to interrupt just one second. Yep. There's just a follow-up comment from Brenna. If Lorianne, you could read that out. Sorry, you're muted.
I can just say my comment too. I just was agreeing with Michele that it's when we in stewardship talk about these best practices, you don't want to create a stumbling block for people, and sometimes being alone with money can be a stumbling block. and then also to protect against any kind of accusation. So yes, if money goes missing when a couple is taking it home, like there could be questions about that. So protection kind of both ways, I think, is
Yep.
the point of these things.
Thanks so much, Brenna. Okay, Rick, we're ready.
Thank you for the patience for me. So one of the things that I have, and you, Michele, you may not have the answer, but if you can pose the question to whomever, we had this conversation in our church just last week. So when it becomes, and you mentioned it, when the VSC comes back, who does the United Church Canada specifically say is a good person to be that person to read it, and who is then what's the right body that then gives a green light to that person? If there's some mark on that, is it the board? Is it MMP? I think what's the general rule of thumb there? Like who should be kind of the ones that get it, and who scrutinize it, and who approve it?
So I don't think that there is specific guidance from the United Church on this because contexts are so different. So I have served in congregations where the Christian Education Committee, that someone on that committee were the ones that were looking at criminal records checks. You might be in another place where they said, actually, we want the minister to look at this. But I think it's looking at your own context and figuring out who, for us, is the person or the committee that makes the most sense to have a look at these. And I do want to emphasize that I think part of that is to be clear that you are entrusting this to someone who can hold confidentiality when a criminal records check comes in. Maybe it's something that needs to be acted on, but maybe it's something that doesn't need to be acted on because it's not relevant. And then they just need to not ever talk about the fact that they know that that person has a criminal conviction. So it's really, really dependent on the context. So I could answer to you who that might be in my congregation, but I can't tell you who it would be in your congregation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is Mark. I think to add to that, because I think it is more of the person than the office that is held. So the chair of my MMP committee might be the best person, but it also could be some people have MMP committees that maybe talk more than they should. Or same for Christian education, right? You might have the chair of your Christian education committee in that congregation is excellent at confidentiality, and they might be the person that all the rumors start at. So we can't say one specific group because it really is an individual context.
Yeah. We are pretty much at time, and I'm aware that we still have a couple of questions left. So I want to check if people want to hang around for, I think the next couple of questions don't need to be hugely long answers.
In for the penny, in for the pound.
All right. We certainly understand if people have other things that they needed to get to at 8 o'clock. So we've been talking about volunteers. Who can do what? The question that came into us is, can adherents serve on a governing body of the United Church of Canada? Mark.
Hello again. This question also had a bigger context, as there was a proposal that was coming through Western Ontario Waterways to be going to General Council. And so the question was also around, in that context, was around the state of the proposal. And so that proposal is going to be brought back to the Regional Council at the fall meeting to have discussion around it again, for seeing it has been worked on with the Congregational Support Commission. However, at the current time, can adherents serve on the governing body of the United Church? Yes, but they need to have a prior request to the regional, or not prior, they need to have approval from the Regional Council. The governing body of the church is made up of, according to the manual, is made up of members of the church. However, there is an exception that adherents can be made members of the governing body with regional council approval. There are a couple of things I'd like to add to this. The term adherent is incredibly vague in the manual. I would encourage individual congregations to have a discussion about what does an adherent mean to you. At the last congregation I served, we talked about, we were trying to be as broad as we could, but we still put limits on it, is have you been active in any aspect of the life and work of our church in the last 3 years? So like, you haven't come to a single worship service, but you come and volunteer at the turkey supper. We would consider, that church would consider that being active. You were active in part of the life and work. But we did put a time frame on it because they did want to have some, they didn't want someone being able to come and vote on something that had been to the church once 10 years ago, but are considering themselves a part of the church, even though they're not being a part. So I would encourage people to look at what an adherent is for your local context. The reason that has been given for having the governing body only members, except for the exceptions when a request is made and if that is granted, is that in rare occasions, the governing body does have the ability to discipline members of that church. The governing body would be the responsible body given a workplace harassment complaint, would be the responsible body given any other kind of complaint amongst individuals in the church. And so the question is that although it's not common, it can happen. And then the concern becomes, can those who are not members exercise authority over those who are? And that has been the question that the United Church has been wrestling with when talking about this issue. But so the short answer is yes, but the governing body needs to ask permission of the regional council, congregational support commission, to have this person who is an adherent serve on our governing body.
Thank you, Mark, for the answer and for the background about the remit that's in one of our regions, as well as the reasons behind why we have these kinds of rules. We've talked a lot tonight about volunteers, but we did get a question about staff. So the question we got is I find a popular one. Who is the employer of a minister?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so hopefully people will like this answer because I was trying to think of a good example, and I think I've got a really good one. So the community of faith is the employer of the minister. However, the wider church determines the eligibility to be employed. So you might think, well, that sounds strange, but we see it in lots of places. I'm going to use professional sports. The owner of the Maple Leafs pays their players. Those players work for the Maple Leafs. However, the NHL can determine that a player is not suitable to play in the NHL, can void trades, can step in if a contract is not appropriate. So while the individual team employs the player, the wider league is responsible for the eligibility of that player to play. And that is the best analogy that I have been able to come up with for relating it to ministry personnel.
Thank you. And I think we've just put a reminder in the chat that when you do have questions about employment and personnel and HR matters, that McCall is there for our questions, and certainly in my experience is very responsive with answers, so that if it's something more general, but especially if it's something specific about a situation that is happening in our congregations, McCall is a great resource to reach out to. I think that is the end of our questions for tonight. And our answers. And I'm grateful for everyone who came today. We did have more questions than we thought we could fit into an hour. So there is tentatively planned another session of Ask an Expert, probably coming in January of 2025. So once we get on the other side of all of our regional meetings, you might look for more information about the next session of Ask an Expert.